I think a lot of young people have been waiting to hear the same things, probably for the past few years as they have been the past few weeks, which is a really clear stance on what lies ahead for the folks who are most vulnerable in the United States. I'm thinking right now about LGBTQIA plus Americans and those folks who have been working really hard over the past few years to recover from the COVID-19 crisis. So while Gaza and the ongoing conflict that's happening with Israel and in the Gazan on the Gazan Peninsula, there's also some questions here about what it means for those Americans who have been asking and asking and asking for answers also back home domestically.
You wonder to what extent geopolitics will factor into this debate at all, Jen, and you can speak to that. The moderators have a lot of places they could go here with so many questions about policy proposals, more of them, I think, aimed at Kamala Harris than Donald Trump. And I wonder your thought on that. I think it's been established that the bar is higher for the vice president. She's less known than Donald Trump and has not put forth details on some of her ideas. What do you think?
I think they have different issues that they're facing tonight, right? So what we
Yeah.
know is that there's a lot of concern about Project 2025 and the fact that in the first 10 pages there are overt attacks against marginalized Americans, namely, Black and brown Americans, immigrant folks, and also LGBTQIA and disabled folks. So a lot of folks who are typically associated with the Democratic Party are really paying attention tonight to hear more about how this Project 2025 might actually affect their lives. Where VP Harris has an opportunity is to actually give us some sort of policy that will actually speak against this kind of retraction of protections, this retraction of rights that is very clearly a part of not only Project 2025, but some of Trump's previous administration, his previous Agenda 47 is almost mirrored identically in Project 2025. And this was the agenda that was seeking to make binary gender a kind of federal statute to think about ways to retract support for policies that offer gender affirming care and also to sue practitioners and even identify folks like librarians and teachers as sex offenders. So there's an opportunity for VP Harris to set herself apart and explain how she'll create a more progressive vision for folks who are most afraid of what the outcomes might be in this election. But for the Trump camp, they've got to help people understand why we should take them seriously at all. And I would say at this point, maybe we shouldn't.
Well, okay, Professor, as we consider whether or not Kamala Harris will be outlining more progressive ideas, she may be haunted a bit by her primary campaign of 2019, in which a lot of these attacks that she's been fielding from her opponents emanate from her stance on fracking, for example, healthcare and other matters. Is it wise for her to try to hold the center tonight, or does she need to be pulled to the left a little bit if she wants to turn out the voters who will actually amount to them that could make her president?
I think that she's been working really hard for the past few weeks to get those moderate voters on her side. And I think she's going to have a balanced kind of approach tonight. There are people who are listening who actually, I think that typically folks see as kind of in the pocket of the Democrats. Those people who are more on the radical left or the more leftist politics, they believe that those folks will automatically show up to vote because they're hoping that those young people, those marginalized folks, those vulnerable populations, working class Americans will want to save us from fascism and hope that this will be a preservation of democracy. But they can't just count on people believing that she'll stand up for them. They can't take those voters for granted. So she will absolutely have to toe the line between some of that more kind of left-leaning policy work and helping us understand what that looks like, but also remembering that moderate voters are still asking questions of both sides.
Mm-hmm. Jen, it's our job to try to pull you into policy here. We're on Bloomberg TV and radio, and you're pretty good at that. But I wonder to what extent this is a personality contest tonight and the battle of the zingers.
That's the thing that I'm actually concerned about. We've seen over the last few weeks that Trump has come out and literally said that his team told him not to attack Kamala in a personal way, and he did it anyway. And so I think that, there will always be kind of folks choosing their approach. And we know that for Donald Trump, that has previously been through the kind of character assassinations and the efforts to denigrate people based on who that he thinks they are. So I think where VP Harris has really stood apart from him is that she's focused on how she's going to show up for everyday Americans. Well, so he may be fighting that fight. He may be jousting in terms of those negative attacks tonight, but I don't think that she's going to lower herself to that level. She hasn't yet, and I don't think she should today.